Well, hello again, friends. Welcome back to the Deep Roots Podcast. Richard here, and I'm so excited to be back for another conversation with all of you as we continue this journey into and excavating the deeper truths of this walk with God and what that looks like, and how God is continuing to want to grow us and form us and help us establish deeper roots into Him, Lord, and Lord willing, this is going to be a journey that will hopefully be fruitful for you, just as much as it is for me to be able to just share my heart and be able to share the goodness that God continues to be up to in my life, even in the hardest of times, right? And so that's where we are, and I'm thankful to be back for another conversation. So hopefully you were able to listen to our most recent conversation. It was almost a year since I was back with you, and I was able to share anything with you. There's been a lot of things that have been going on in the last year, and if you listen to the last episode, you'll know some of that story and that narrative of the journey that my family and I have been on as for my wife as Amber went through a major illness, and we nearly lost her last November. But thankfully, she has was able to miraculously heal from that. God did amazing work in her through all that, and now here we are, a year later, and getting to really kind of dive back in and sharing more with all of you. So that's where we are now, and where I want to go today is just this idea of suffering. That's a conversation that has come up quite a bit lately with so many friends that I've spoke with, so many friends that I've talked to in recent weeks and months. Is why does God allow suffering? Why does God allow bad things to happen? Right? People on the outside may look in on those in the Christian faith and think that we should all have our stuff together, that things should just be easy. And we know that could be further from the truth, right? That this life with God is not going to be easy on this side of eternity. But it is good because God is good, right? It reminds me of that whole thing from the Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch of the Wardrobe, when I think it's Lucy talking to the beavers and asking is about Aslan. Is he good? Or is he safe? Sorry, is he safe? No, he's not safe, but he's good. And that's an important thing, just that picture of what God is like and how good he is, even in the midst of so much struggle and suffering that we deal with. So again, biggest questions we have in this world a lot of times is, why is there suffering? Or even, why does God allow suffering to happen? Right? And we know this truth that suffering is this universal language that it bonds us all in so many different ways. Because none of us are immune from it, right? It may look different in different situations for different people, but suffering is just something that's a part of this life that we all have to deal with. And no matter what it is, they could take a toll, lead our lives in so many different directions, whether good and even not so good, because they can lead to some really harsh agreements that can lead to some really deep sin patterns. Or we can allow God and we can respond to them in such a way that allows God to really do a real work in us as well. So again, some good directions, some not so good directions, right? And this isn't lost on anyone, right? It's the universal language of this life, of this world, is suffering, right? Because we all have that commonality. We all have that in this life. And again, my own struggle, my own suffering, it's taken different directions, and it's going to look different for each one of you, right? Just some examples, even from my life. We just passed the 14-year mark in October of my dad's death. He died in a car accident back in 2009, very suddenly, and an event that really took a toll on me and my family in a lot of ways. It led me to really question this life, question, what's the purpose in life? And I had a lot of things. I really dealt with a lot of struggle over a few years. But on the flip side of that, I've said this recently, and this is an interesting idea to think about. Had the circumstance not happened, had I not walked through that struggle. Had we not lost him in the way we did, would my life have gone in the direction that it has? Would I be here sitting with you now? Would I be standing in front of men teaching men how to walk deeper with God? Would I be leading conferences in that standpoint? There's a lot of things that I wonder sometimes. If that tragedy hadn't happened, what direction would my life have gone? I don't know. And I think that's an important thing to remember, is that there's always a mystery to what God is up to in the midst of it. But I know, and I do know for certainty, that God was able to use that tragedy to bring about a greater redemption in my life, lead me back to Him, and lead me to full surrender. And then the ripple effect of that has been rather amazing to see. And as I look back at the things that have happened over the last years, I mean, other things that have taken place, seeing my children battle through illness, that's always been a tough thing. My middle son in particular Brandon has dealt with some really tough illness with diabetes and other things that have landed him in the hospital and other things. And it's hard to watch your kids suffer through those things and question suffer within themselves, not just the physical aspect of it, but the toll it takes on them, of like, especially at a young age, like, why do I have to deal with this, right? And because I know that's a question that has to rattle through his mind, why was I left to suffer this way with this illness? And I know we have other friends that have with children that battle illnesses as well, that the same. I mean, it's as strong as your faith may be, it doesn't take out the struggle, right? The struggle just still doesn't go away and all that. So I've dealt with job loss, right? Getting fired from a job over 4 years ago that I was in for almost 15 years or whatnot. And so much career uncertainty that took place following that. So that was a struggle, very real struggle. For me, I was embedded, like, it helped my strength. My faith was a key aspect of helping me continue to walk through that, but it didn't take out the struggle, right? There was still a lot of internal strife in that. Amber's illness last year, even when she got through all that, even when she was home and well, it took a toll on me. I remember we got into, we're coming up on the Christmas season. In our family, we love Christmas time. We love decorating the kids, with the kids and getting the house set up for Christmas every year. And that's just a special time for us. And we got into that. She came home before Thanksgiving and was well and continuing to recover and get her strength back. Yet I got through, and I got into the holidays, and I was spent. Right, it had taken such a toll on me watching her suffer through that over the course of the month of November. Amber, we were talking just yesterday actually about this, and she's like, "You were very much a bah humbug last Christmas," and I was, and I had to walk through that and figure out, okay, why was I so bitter? Why was I so angry when my faith is what pulled me through that whole event? Surrendering to God every single day, surrendering her to Him every single day, and the outcome to Him every single day through all of that. And then on the backside, I felt like I had put so much energy into it in that case that I didn't have anything left to offer. And I think there was some deep embedded bitterness in what had happened. Why did it happen? Questioning all those things, even though that's a hard question to ask. Even struggling with, I think I probably had some anger towards God and all that, even though I knew God didn't cause this to happen. But, I think there was, even though I don't think I wanted to admit that, I think that was still a part of it. And I got a chance to really walk through that at a men's conference in the last month in early October, where I was able to really kind of begin to walk through and grieve through some of these things. But it led to a very difficult and very hard year. Through 2023 for me personally, as I struggle with that. I had some anxieties and other struggles, again, battle back into the career uncertainty piece, all those things that kind of molded together to create kind of this really difficult place for me in my life and my journey as well. So Again, each one of those things is going to carry with it its own struggle and its own difficulty. But the reality is, through all our suffering, friends, is that there is a lot of healing and redemption that can take place on the backside of it all. And it's proof that God is still up to good in those sufferings, because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was up to good even in the midst of my own struggles and my own personal sufferings, and those of others that I've seen and been around as well. And many times we can't see the hand of God in it, but especially we're in the midst of suffering. But just knowing the reality and being able to rest in the truth that he is right there with us is very important. And again, talking about that, sometimes we may see God working through all the way through suffering, like I said, like I was talking about, but the suffering on the backside can bring greater challenges, and that's exactly what I walk through. But I want to share some deep truths with all of you as well, friends. I'm reading through this book right now called Instruments in the Hands of the Redeemer by Paul David Tripp. It's a very good read, and just helping me. Just it's an equipping book for me personally, and just continuing to be better equipped to walk with people through their own struggles and their own narrative as well, in their sufferings, and helping to counsel people through those things. So in this particular area where he was talking about suffering, where he says that the Bible explains the ultimate reasons why we suffer. Right? We suffer because we live in a fallen world plagued by disease, natural disasters, dangerous animals, broken machineries, etc. All kinds of things, right? It's just the nature of the world we live in. We suffer because of our own flesh. Much of our suffering is at our own hands. We make choices that make our own lives painful and difficult. We suffer because of people sinned against us. From subtle prejudice to personal attacks, we suffer at the hands of others. And we suffer because of the devil, right? That's a reality. We live in a world at war, right? The reality, there really is an enemy in our world, a trickster and a liar who divides, destroys, and devours, and tempts us with things that promise to give life, but actually destroy it, just as he tried to do with Jesus, right? Try to tempt him in the wilderness, try to tempt him with the kingdom, try to tempt him with food, try to tempt him with just giving him everything, right? But that's just that's what it is. It's that unholy trinity of ourselves, of the world, and the evil one, right? That we have to battle against, and that's that's why we suffer. And we suffer also because of God's good purpose, right? God calls his children to suffer for his glory and for the redemptive good, for their redemptive good. So. And here's just some important truths about it, from Scripture as well, that God is sovereign over all things, even in suffering. In Isaiah 45:7, he says, I create the light and make the darkness. I send good times and bad times. I, the Lord, am the one who does these things. And Ephesians 1:11, furthermore, because we are united with Christ, we have received an inheritance from God, for he chose us in him in advance, and he makes everything work out according to his plan. Right? Also remember that God is good. For the Lord is good. His mercy and loving kindness are everlasting. His faithfulness endures to all generations. That's from Psalm 100, verse 5, and the Psalm 33:5. He loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of the loving kindness of the Lord. And also that God has a purpose in our suffering, right? Romans 8:17. And if we are his children, then we are his heirs also, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, sharing his spiritual blessing and inheritance, if we indeed are in his suffering, so that we may also share in his glory. And this is obviously a popular one from James, right? James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4, where it says, consider it nothing but joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you fall into various trials. Be assured that the testing of your faith through experience produces endurance. I lost my spot. Produces endurance leading to a spiritual maturity and inner peace. Let the endurance have its perfect result and do a thorough work so that you may be perfect and completely developed in your faith, lacking in nothing. Again, that's huge. So the suffering, it's just, God has a purpose in it. And I think that's important to remember, that we shouldn't waste our pain, right? there is a purpose in the struggle and the suffering, but we have to learn to remember to walk with God in all of that. See what he may be up to in the midst of our suffering, because he is still up to good in the midst of that. Even when we can't see it, God is still up to good, and there's a purpose behind all of that, and it helps us grow deeper and becoming more deeply rooted in him, right? As this little branded plaque says over my shoulder, become good soil, right? That's all a part of the journey of becoming more, right? And that's what God's after each one of us, right? It doesn't end with salvation. That's just a starting block of getting to become more deeply rooted and yielding more and more of our deeper places of our hearts to God, and allowing him to continue to work in us. And that's such an important thing to remember in this journey. So so friends, thank you again for joining me today. I hope this is helpful and encouraging in some way, and because I know this is it's a tough topic. It's a tough topic to walk through, and just knowing that suffering is a big part of this journey and part of what we have to endure in this life. But knowing in all of that God is still up to good, right? That he's in our suffering, he's in our struggle, and he's going to bring out a greater redemption. Whether we see it or not, there's always still good things up to. So thank you, friends, for joining me for this conversation in this podcast episode. I look forward to sharing more with you next time. Until then, take care. God bless.